Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second to last Zoom. Um, Nice to see you all on here. I'm going to share with you the screen which has the presentation and also the code for you to scan. So just wait one moment as I set that up. Here we go. So yes, this is COP5. Second to last one. So here is this scanning code for you. Remember that everyone needs to scan the codes for each session. At the end of the PD, I will be sending an email out with all the codes on there. So if you missed any of them, then you'll be able to scan in for those. So tonight's session is a little bit shorter. We're not going for the hour and a half. It'll probably just be around the hour mark. That is because through the communities of practice, I need to cover 8 hours with you, and we've already done 6 hours. So we've got tonight as 1 hour, and then I think it's next week we have the last hour. So just a shorter one tonight. But yes, please scan that. And if your microphone is not on mute yet, if you could please do so. Okay, right. Let's get started on tonight's topic. So we are looking at, actually, before we do that, yes, I wanted to have a time to share. So please pop into the chat or unmute yourself, whatever you prefer. How has your week gone? Have you ever, have you tried, uh, any of the things that we've been talking about? You got anything to share about structured literacy, things that you've tried? Has anyone used the syntax project? And I know it was only last week, of course, but has anyone started using the tide with their class and showing that power cycle in planning? So this is your chance to share. So either in the chat or unmute yourself. Hoping that some people will share what they've been up to. Would anybody like to be brave? Tell us something that you've been doing. Doesn't have to just be about writing. It could also be anything to do with structure literacy. Maybe some of you have done some explicit vocab teaching. Um, Here come a few there. Um, Joe Blythe says, I tried the because but so activity and it was great. Some great writing. Awesome, Joe. That's great to hear. Um, yeah, fantastic. Don't forget to include all those parts and what conjunctions do. Okay, fantastic. Michelle says, our school is starting to bring in tide across the school. Great, Michelle. I'm sure that you will see an improvement in that sort of structure that children bring to their writing. That's great. Michael Body says, we have been writing speeches over the last couple of weeks. It would be great to get your ideas on how to incorporate structured literacy in this type of writing. Absolutely, Michael. That whole power and the power cycle, and using Tide to work out how to structure a speech works very, very well. I've heard of a lot of teachers using Tide in order to write speeches because you start with the topic sentence to start with. So that's about the introduction and then presenting each idea and then giving some more detailed examination of each idea, and then, of course, the ending at the end. So the tide mnemonic can work very, very well for writing speeches. So, yeah, they'll be really good. Um, Michael Body also says whole class structure literacy, the code, handwriting, and whole class reading is working well. Go you. Well done. Excellent. Good to hear that you've leaped in and got a whole lot of those things going, which I know the school, of course, that you come from, and I know you've been going a little, going teaching structure literacy for quite a while now. But good to hear that everything is working really well. And a lot of those things can support each other, can't they? Um, Guild says, I've fully embraced whole class reading and fluency peers, noticing a big difference in fluency and confidence when reading out loud. Absolutely. Research very much tells us that nothing, or one of the ways to really increase fluency within a class is by embracing whole class reading and fluency peers. It's of course not the only way to increase fluency, but that's great to hear that you're noticing a big difference because that is very much reflected within the research. Sonia says, yes, I have used some of the slides from the syntax project when teaching suffixes. Awesome, great. Great when you use syntax project and morphology project to support perhaps your scope and sequence. Yeah, so you can certainly use some of those resources then. Leanne Scott says, have tried fluency peers in my year one class. This has been very successful. Children have grown in confidence and fluency. The coach has been asking questions to help with comprehension. They love it that much that they love to do it every day. Fantastic, Leanne. That's great to hear. Yeah, we're finding fluency peers are really good to use at all ages, right from new entrants all the way up to year eight. They can be used to develop confidence in reading, but also confidence in almost public speaking, isn't it? Because they're having to speak to a partner. And of course, it really, really helps with that fluency. Great. Anne Gordon has said, I have extended my review section in the code session and seeing good results. That's fantastic, Anne. That's really great to hear. Remember, review is the most important part of a lesson. So we really, really want, that part to be the most prominent part of the lesson. It's quite important to always go over that material that they have been learning to consolidate it. It's all about cognitive load theory, isn't it? Going from our, working memory and bring it into long-term memory. We need that rehearsal over and over again. Awesome. Great. Fantastic. Well, it's really great to hear some of the successes that you've been encountering in your classrooms. Really, really great to hear. And if you don't get the chance tonight to tell me some great results that you've had, please do feel free to email me because I really do enjoy hearing how the PD is making a difference to your teaching and ultimately, of course, in your classroom. Fantastic. Great. All right. Well, let's have a little look at what we're going to look at tonight. We are going to be carrying on with the power cycle. But this is one thing I just wanted to show you before we looked at that. This is related to the tide part. I saw this on Facebook a number of weeks ago, and I really, really liked this example because here you can see the gist or the topic sentence there in the gist sentence, and this teacher has used the explicit vocab teaching of the words that they're focusing in on that week, and weaved that into the gist sentence. So I really just wanted to show that that, yeah, you can incorporate some of those other parts of structure literacy in and weave them in together. Okay, so here we've got explicit vocab teaching linked in with that the tied teaching. So last time we looked at the power cycle, of course, and we looked at that the P in the power stands for pre-reading for the gist. So we're, getting our information from the text and discovering what is the gist of the story. The next P, of course, is pulling apart the prompt. What is it that the teacher's asking me to do? Are they asking me to explain an idea? Are they asking me to compare and contrast two ideas? Are they asking me to give examples of something I've read in the text? What is it that I'm writing about? And then the third P, of course, is to pick your ideas. And so that's where the planning starts. And then the child, of course, moves into the O for organize. And this is where you can see how we have two mnemonics. Last time we looked at tide, and tonight we're going to look at Cspace, which comes under the organize part of the power cycle. And then it doesn't matter if you're using tide or Cspace, the rest of the power cycle is exactly the same. So really it's only in the organization part of the power cycle where we have sort of two choices. And a lot of it depends on what type of text we are writing. So let me just minimize this so you can actually see. So here on the left, we've got the tied mnemonic. And the tied mnemonic, of course, last time we looked at that, we've got a topic sentence, and then we had I for information. So in this case, if our topic introduced sharks, our first bit of information might be about their habitat. And then the D unpacks that, it gives more detailed examination of that information. So here under habitat, I would talk more about details around the ocean and the rocks, etc. And then we can follow that ID structure again, and then of course ending with the E, the ending part of my informative or opinion piece. So we use tied for informative or opinion. The difference with Cspace, of course, is this is the mnemonic that we remember for the narrative type of writing. So we're talking about story writing, non-fiction writing, sorry, not non-fiction, fiction writing. And here, this will be quite it's a very well-known concept, and that is along a story arc, and you'll very much recognize the story arc concept under Cspace. So here, this is very much following, every good movie follows a good story arc, every good novel follows a good story arc, and Cspace is the mnemonic that we're going to look at. So here it is in a little bit more detail. So the C of Cspace stands for the characters and the setting. So we start our story, of course, unpacking the characters, who they might be, and also building up that setting. And, we've been doing this for years and years, haven't we, about great ways to show, not tell, that setting and how to introduce characters. So a lot of the Cspace, of course, is going to be very familiar to you. Not a lot of change, but it's just really putting it into a mnemonic so that there is a plan and a structure that the children can follow. So the P in Cspace, we've got two P's there. There might be a problem that the characters face, or there might be a purpose for those characters. And then, of course, you can see the actions start to go upwards. There becomes a sort of building in action. Sometimes this can be a little bit faster in some areas, a little bit slower in others, until we reach the top of that action. And the C in Cspace stands for the conclusion or the climax of the story. This is kind of where it all comes to a head. And then, of course, the action comes down the other side until we reach the end, or sometimes there's also an end emotion. So let's have a little look at how that works. In a junior end, I've seen this poster in a couple of classrooms now, and you can see how it fits in that power cycle. Remember, junior students, they might just do the power part of the power cycle to start with. So there you've got your P for pull apart the prompt and pick your ideas, and then you're going to organize with Cspace, and you can see that whole lovely structure there. You can also see there by the character part in Cspace, that's where you add your hook. So if you have a hook in the story, that's where you would put that there. And then, of course, the W for the write and say more. So let's have a look at Cspace and unpack it a little bit. So the characters and the setting part, they can include the narrator who tells the story, but the characters might be people, there might be animals, there might be a creator or any type of actor within the story that the child wants to tell. The setting, of course, we want to explore location and the details of that. You know, what is the time? How are we going to show that it's set perhaps in summer, or that it's set in, you know, the 1930s? Rather than just telling that, how are we going to show that without actually saying it? And of course, we might explore the place where it's set and maybe the weather. And there's a whole lot of other things in there. So my advice to you is, when we are teaching students the Cspace structure, we take each part, for instance, the characters would be one part, and really spend quite a while developing it. So it's not that I just teach the whole Cspace mnemonic in one day and right now, kids, this is what it looks like, and now we're going to write. If we do that, we're not going to get really good, well-crafted writing. So my advice to you is, perhaps spend a whole week on characters. And so the writing might just be starting, say, 5 different stories, but just focusing on the characters. How are we going to set up the story and crafting that, looking at examples of how good authors introduce characters, and perhaps the kids having a go at doing that and reading each other's beginning of a story, and you know, having a look at basically what good authors do. Okay, we don't always have to write a complete whole story. We can focus in on parts of a story and really explore different ways of looking at that element. And then, you know, you might spend another week looking at settings, and you know, exploring lots of different ideas on how to set up a really good setting. Right, now the P in Cspace is the problem or the purpose. So there might be a problem that occurs that initiates the character's goal. So, you know, or sometimes there might be a purpose The characters are about to embark on something, maybe an adventure, or maybe there is an issue going on that they need to solve. If you look at any good movie, it very much starts off like this, doesn't it? That characters get introduced, and the action's kind of quite slow, but then, oh, there's a problem or there's a purpose that the character needs to achieve. And so begins the story. So then that's when the action starts. So events that unfold naturally, and the pacing, of course, can include tense, fast moments and maybe some calmer, slower movements. So we want to, spend quite a few weeks developing that, how to put tension on into the story, and how to back that off. Because any story that is on one level, monotone, in terms of action, is not as interesting to read as one that has fast and slow pacing in it. I mean, you think of a good movie. Um, it doesn't matter what genre of movie, right? There'll be bits where, oh, something's happening, oh, and then it eases off again. And then, oh, something else happens and it eases off again. So that's what we want to mimic in good story writing. And then, of course, the C in Cspace is the conclusion. How does the story end? The final event. And I think this is really worth spending some time on because I cannot tell you how often I have read a story from a child, and the story is, a good, decent story, and then we get to, and then they woke up. It was all a dream. Or, and in the end, everyone died. That tends to be the usual conclusion. So it's really worth spending a couple of weeks looking at how do good authors end their stories, and unpack that and come up with a whole bank of ideas as a class maybe, and have a practice at writing good stories, endings, so that they really can develop far more interesting ideas. And then, of course, the last thing there is the end emotion. So this is, something that the character might realize, um, or maybe it might be a moral of the story, or there is an end emotion of the characters. So let's have a look at the structure in terms of an actual story. So here I've picked Hansel and Gretel, and I'm just going to make a few notes on the right hand side that really reflect this story. So who are the characters? Well, of course, we've got Hansel and Gretel, and actually we've got the witch as well, which I haven't put there. The setting, there's a couple of different settings in the story. We've got the forest, and also the witch's house. The problem um, was that they were searching for wood, but they got lured into the witch's house by following the bread. So that's a real problem. So the action in the story is, of course, they make a plan to escape. The witch tries to fatten them up. They trick the witch, and the witch ends up in the oven, which is our conclusion. The end emotion is that Hansel and Gretel start going home, and they feel relief that they escaped. So you can sort of see how we can use stories to show children how these things, are developed within a story. So it's really, really important too that we don't just leap in for children to just start writing stories. It really needs to be well scaffolded and slowed right down so that in each part of that Cspace, we are developing the idea, we're looking at exemplars, what do good authors do, and coming up with a whole bank of ideas, because the more we explore each part, the better the writing's going to be. Remember, we're wanting quality writing, and it's better to write 10 beginnings of stories that are very well crafted, than write 10 complete stories that might start really well but lose a lot of oomph in the middle, and the ending end up being, sort of an afterthought. So there needs to be a whole lot of collaborative writing as a class, and it's a really, really important stage. So during the PD, we've talked a lot about the I do, we do, you do. So it's quite important that as teachers, we are modeling in that I do, and that modeling the I do might also look like you looking at other authors. So, what do good authors do? That's the I do stage. And then we don't just leap straight into story writing, because that would be going to the you do stage. We want that bit in the middle, we do, the facilitation stage. So it might be that you plan stories together as a class, or maybe children in groups, that they nut out ideas and really develop each part. Um, and the we do can also look like we're just writing a part of a story, and receiving feedback from the teacher, or feedback from my peers, and looking to improve that. And so when we introduce either Tide or Cspace, we do it over a time. It's not just all in one lesson or even in one week. We really need to go through that I do, we do, you do. And once we've spent time unpacking all of that, of course, then they can have that you do stage. And hopefully by then they've looked at good exemplars, they've seen their teacher modeling good writing, they've had lots of collaborative writing with their peers, they've had an opportunity to write bits of stories to get feedback on how to improve things or things that are going really well. And then they go into the you do stage. So, as teachers, the I do, model the technique. The we do part, you could get children deciding on the next part of the story. Maybe as a class, you could take a vote. What is this character going to do? Here are some ideas. What do you think we should do? It could be that the we do stage looks like, as a class, we write the start of the story together, and then children can form groups to collaborate on different endings. Or perhaps as a whole class, we write the beginning of a story, maybe do the characters and the setting and set up the problem. And then as a you do stage, they write the different ending to the story. So let's have a look at some practical examples of how it can look in the classroom. So what is it going to look like at the junior end of the school? Well, here is an example from Emma Nana. I'm sure a lot of you know who she is. She did this in a class where she read The Witch in the Cherry Tree, and she used it as an example of what a good author does to have the story arc. And so, she read the story, and then together as a class, they started mapping out this Cspace. So Emma here is really modeling to the children how this mnemonic works. And you can see there's some words, but there's also some pictures, and she's done that really, really well there. Here's another one she did with another class, based on the book Elmo and the Rainbow. And you can see there got the characters, we've got the setting, there's some wonderful pictures there. We've got a problem, there's the action, conclusion, and the end emotion. Okay, and so yeah, using picture books to look at different story arcs. They're kind of a little bit like exemplars, aren't they? Here's another one that Emma did with Perky and the Possum Trap. Again, you can see that she's mapped out that sea space. You can also see here, this is probably with maybe a little bit of an older junior classroom, that under the characters she's got who. So she's starting to use some of those developing questions prompts that we looked at last week. And yeah, she's utilizing those cards to develop those concepts then. You'll also see the word there, then and finally. So here she's starting to introduce or tying in some syntax, tying in subordinating conjunctions. And so these are really good beginnings of sentences. So yeah, just really utilizing several different parts of her literacy together. Here's another one based on Davy D's dog. So another way to set it out. This would probably be for new entrant children. Okay, so relying heavily on pictures to develop the idea of the sea space story map. And at the junior end of the school, we're going to be spending a lot of time collaborating and unpacking using maybe big books or picture books to look at the sea space, uh, you know, the sea space mnemonic rather than the children actually writing themselves. And I'll show you why in a minute in the curriculum. Here is one where a new entrant, sorry, no new entrants, I think this was year one, a child based on a book, uh, and I think this is Davy Dog by the looks of things, where they had to map out the story themselves. So at this point, they're not actually writing by themselves, but they can still be introduced to that sea space mnemonic. So what does it look like at the senior end of the school? Well, of course, they are more able to do writing. And so here's an example, another New Zealand teacher, Amy Benton, who has developed this story map that she uses with her students. So this is based on Giraffes Can't Dance. And so they've read the story together and then might have talked together with class, but then the child or the children have been asked to actually map out the story before perhaps using that example to write their own story. Okay, so let's have a little look at the new curriculum because there's some interesting things in there that you might not have realised. So let's look at phase one. This is the junior end of the school, years 0 to 3. And we have got some things that I want to point out. So first of all, a lot of the writing that we're doing in those first few years is mainly based on developing the handwriting, developing this dictated sentence and developing our code knowledge. So there might not necessarily be a whole lot of story writing. So these are the things that we're focusing on. You can see there under transcription skills where the writing, of course, can't occur until they have handwriting automatic. So we need to be explicitly teaching handwriting every day for at least 10 minutes using a consistent school-wide approach. And of course, you can see there's quite a big focus on that. Under composition, of course, we are really heavily focused in on the sentence level. You can see there, right on the right-hand side, the very first sentences explicitly teach students what a sentence is. Okay, so there is a huge, big emphasis on sentence level. And the reason why we're moving away from just complete story writing in these junior years is because what we're wanting is quality right from the word go. So, a lot of the instruction and a lot of the writing that the children are doing in those first few years is really developing their handwriting, developing their code knowledge, and developing their sense of what a good sentence is. Because I mean, we've all seen it, haven't we, in that year one and two space, those type of stories that just go on and on, that just waffly. And I went to the beach, and then I saw a fish, and then we went home and had an ice cream, and then I went to my friend's house, and then we played. Okay, we're wanting to move away from that. So there'll be a lot of modelling happening in the junior classes, and that sort of collaborative work with the students rather than just leaving them to just write. It's not to say that they aren't writing, but we want to move away from that sort of almost free choice writing. So here's a picture, I want you to write about it, that type of thing, because we want children to develop complex sentences. We want them to have automatic handwriting, and also we want that spelling, which is what the whole, in the junior end, we're looking at developing their phonetic knowledge. Okay. So here we've got, students are just writing a small amount of writing. So, we've got even at year one and year two, write one or more sentences. So it's not talking about huge amounts of writing. Perhaps around year three, we might be starting to write a paragraph about a topic that includes, recognize this, a topic sentence, supporting details, and a concluding sentence. That is your tied mnemonic there. And when they developed the curriculum, they very much had Think SRSD in front of them. And so while you might not see the tied mnemonic listed, you will see those key words in there. Again, this is from that phase one. That top arrow there, use simple organizers. For example, a graphic organizer or mnemonic. This is exactly what they're talking about, Think SRSD. And also that bottom arrow there, write single paragraph text that follow from their planning. Again, they have Think SRSD firmly in mind with that. Okay. So the other arrow that I want to talk about is the one on the far left. So students should be writing daily as soon as they have enough transcription knowledge and skills to make readable spellings. So that's really the first key. And that's why you will see through the, sorry, while why you can see through that writing process there in the beginning first few years, it's a lot of talking. So in the new entrants, they're planning their writing by saying a sentence to their teacher. In year one, planning their writing through talking. The next one, planning a short series of sentences through talk. And it's really only when we get to the point where they have enough transcription knowledge and skills that's when we can start writing. But in the meantime, of course, we can be doing all the Cspace work and Tide work, looking at what good writers do and planning together. So let's have a look at the new curriculum, phase two. So here you will see again big emphasis on handwriting. That top arrow on the right hand side, use a consistent school-wide approach, teach handwriting explicitly every day, right up to year 6. And under transcription skills as well, we're doing a lot of code work to get that spelling up and going. Under composition, we've got a lot of syntax work going on. All of those there under composition talk about getting the sentence level right. Okay, so, demonstrating understanding of a dependent clause and an independent clause. We've got in the next one, difference between a clause and an adverbial phrase. All of this is under the syntax project. So if you don't know what those things mean, as you are teaching through the syntax project, you'll certainly come across all of that. Okay. And the arrow course on the right, explicitly teach sentence structure and punctuation using sentence combining. So that's all that syntax work, explanations and modeling. Students who can write well-constructed sentences with ease free up their working memory to focus on content. So it's really that syntax and the working on sentence level that we want really well defined. Okay, under composition, we have got, you'll see here, it's not listed as Cspace, but have a look at the deliberate words within it. So children will draw on their own experiences and knowledge, as well as acquired knowledge, to write text to entertain. So in other words, stories that contain narrative elements, and here they are: character, setting, problem, purpose, plan, action, resolution, and conclusion. Doesn't that sound familiar? That is Cspace. Okay, so very much in the new curriculum. Further down, it's just caught my eye actually, particularly in the year 6 one. It's the third one from the bottom. May use shifts in time and several settings. So that's that action, bringing on and easing the tension, etc. Under the writing to inform, so this is your non-fiction writing, you will recognize there the Tide mnemonic. So exactly where the arrow is, introduce a topic clearly and group related information logically into paragraphs. Okay, so that's talking about the Tide mnemonic there. Again, in the year 4, 5, 6, at the top there, use organizers, e.g. graphic organizers or mnemonics, suitable to the text structure to organize and plan writing. What they're talking about there is, do you use Tide or do you use Cspace, depending on what type of writing you are doing. You can see under the writing processes, under drafting, again, transfer ideas from planning organizers or mnemonics into sentences. And you'll see under there, again, the Tide mnemonic referenced. Write non-fiction paragraphs that have a topic sentence, detailed sentence, and a concluding sentence. So yeah, they very much had the Think SRSD model open when they wrote the curriculum. Okay, so just before I answer some questions about what we've been talking this evening, next week is our last Zoom session together, our last community of practice. So the last one is all question and answer. So please, if you've got questions that you want it answered, anything to do with literacy whatsoever, anything about the PD that we've talked about, or if there's anything you want me to unpack a little bit more, this week is your last chance to email me your questions in preparation for our last Zoom together. So it'd be really great if we get a whole lot of you on so that we can share those questions. So yes, please send me lots of questions because it's a little bit hard to answer questions if I don't have any to answer. Right, I am just going to open up the floor. You can either write in the chat or unmute yourself if you want to. Are there any questions that you have about tonight? Just waiting to see if anyone does. In terms of Cspace, it's a fairly easy one to teach, but that doesn't mean that it is an easy one for children to learn. We normally do start teaching Tide first. And the reason for that is writing something that is based on something I've read or something I actually know is a lot easier on the working memory than trying to make up characters, make up a setting, make up action, making up a story. So, yeah, just be aware of that. It's better to start with the Tide mnemonic first. And then maybe after a few months of doing Tide, you might start introducing the Cspace. Any other questions? Natalie asks, will the ministry be offering funding for PLD and Think SRSD? I would like to think so, Natalie, but to be honest, you never know what's going to happen. They have just announced this week that funding is going to be extended for PLD for um, sorry, not for PLD. It is for intervention in uh, year 0 to 8 and high school. So we're excited about that. Yeah, I hope Think SRSD does receive some, its moment in the PLD. But if you are wanting to do the Think SRSD, um, you know, training, I think it's actually quite reasonable. It's 200 US dollars to do the whole course. And yeah, and with that you get the books. I think it's really reasonable. It's a self-learning module, so you're not tied down to Zooms or anything like that. You just follow the different modules, and it's really, really worth doing because it unpacks it, of course, a lot more than what I've been able to do here. This is really just a little wee introduction into some insights of what's in the new curriculum. But if you're really wanting to see a lot more of it, you can do the official Think SRSD training, or if you want to, you can get a facilitator to come and work with your school, and we actually do it as PLD, but that's not funded. That would have to be funded as a teacher only day, etc., that you'd have to get a facilitator in. And I do that sort of work, and there are a number of us who do. Doesn't look like any other questions are coming in. So your last chance, if you've got a burning question. Okay, all right. Well, I will, like I said, it's a nice short one this evening. Please send me your questions in during the week. The next Zoom meeting is your last chance to answer questions. After that, the PD will be finished with. The only other thing, of course, is to be sending in your assessments. And at some point, a survey, a post PLD survey, is sent from the ministry, which you will need to complete as well. But I might talk about that in the next session a little bit more. Just double checking my calendar. Yes, the 31st, so next week, Sunday, will be our last community of practice. So until then, everyone, have a great week. Um, do a whole lot of modelling of Cspace if that's what your class is up to, but keep on some of those other literacy skills that we want you to be developing, particularly that handwriting. Need a huge, increase in that, handwriting with school-wide and across schools. All right, everyone, have a great week. Bye.